Hey, hey, welcome back everyone to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 901, Black Politics. Please hit the like button as you come in, share the video if possible, and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust. I'm also here with my co-host, Renaissance Man.
Hey, peace everyone. Peace to the chat. Please like the video.
Also, there's a doc in the description beneath the video for you to follow along with and reference. And let's get started. So Renaissance, VP Kamala Harris has made a decision, and that decision is to find a VP on the ticket, and that is Tim Walz, governor out of Minnesota. Here's what we know about him so far based on the Kamala Harris page right now. Zoom in on this. Governor Walz is a champion for America's working families. He enlisted in the Army National Guard when he turned 17 and served for 24 years, rising to the rank of Command Sergeant Major. After attending college, thanks to the GI Bill, Tim Walz served his community as a high school teacher and football coach, taking his team to the state championship for the first time in the school's history. He became a member of Congress in a Republican district by representing the needs of the farmers in rural America. As governor, Tim Walz cut taxes for working families, lowered the cost of insulin, and eliminated junk fees and protected women's rights to choose. That experience makes him the ideal ideal running mate for Kamala Harris, who has taken on the big banks, led the fight for reproductive freedom, and stood with our allies against Putin's aggression during her time as prosecutor, attorney general, senator, and vice president. Their shared commitment to working families draws a complete contrast to Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. Instead of making life better for working families or focusing on our future, Trump and Vance are committed to their extreme and dangerous Project 2025 agenda that will roll back Americans' rights and freedoms, hurt the middle class, and threaten our democracy. Let me read this one piece right here. As governor, Walz has done more to help middle-class families get ahead than any other statewide leader in recent memory. He lowered the cost of insulin to $35 per month for many Minnesotans. He eliminated junk fees, and he signed a paid leave into law so that parents can take care of sick families without losing their job. Governor Walz stood up for fundamental freedoms and made Minnesota the first state to pass a codifying abortion rights after the Supreme Court overturned Roe. He funded Minnesota police departments, putting more cops on the street, and investing in body cameras, and established universal background checks for gun purchases, and he worked across the aisle to pass bipartisan infrastructure package. So here's the deal. He's the best candidate out of that selection that was listed about a week and a half ago. We talk about Governor Shapiro out of Pennsylvania. We talk about Governor Andy Beshear out of Kentucky, and Senator out of Arizona, which is Mark Kelly, just to name a few. And then you have Roy Cooper out of North Carolina. What's your take on what's been happening so far in this election process and how it came down to the wire tonight?
Yeah. I frankly, when I heard the pick today, I was really surprised. I thought that Shapiro was going to be the guy. You know, it seemed like it came down to a two-way race between Walz and Shapiro. Frankly, at the beginning of the process, I didn't know who Walz was. I had never heard of him. I was talking to someone, and they said, "Hey, they should pick my governor, Tim Walz." And I was like, "Who is that?" And they were just like, "Go look him up." I saw an interview on MSNBC. He did really well in. That sort of maybe started digging into his background, what he'd done in Minnesota, his career, all those things. Started looking at more clips, and I thought, oh wow, this guy could play pretty well. But once again, I thought if he didn't have a name, I thought he was going to kind of be crowded out by some of the bigger names of an Andy Beshear, a Mark Kelly, a Josh Shapiro, and maybe even a Roy Cooper. So once it got down to basically him and Shapiro as a finalist, I had my fingers crossed that he would win versus Shapiro because he's more progressive of the two. As well as I know the unions gotten behind him. AFL-CIO, they were pushing for him. Even John Fetterman, he was pushing for him. And they even said he used to be in the House of Representatives. So Pelosi even liked him. She said he was his favorite of the crop as well. But I still kind of thought, hey, we're gonna end up going for moderate. So I'm excited. I think he's gonna play really well in the Midwestern, in the rural states where Dems have sort of struggled, or at least at the very least want to try to hold on to that appeal that Joe Biden had. More rural, Rust Belt. The fact that he was with the teachers union, the fact that he's a football coach, he's been a veteran, he's from a really small town. I think he said he grew up in a town of 400 people. So he knows how to really speak to those people and relate to them. Some of them, are literally his family members. So I think it's a good pick. I think it adds to the ticket where he can go places that Kamala and appeal to people that Kamala necessarily can't. And I think the really thing that makes him unique is the progressive streak. I was looking into some of his achievements, and they've passed like $1 billion for housing in Minnesota. I know he gave free school lunch to all kids, all public schools in Minnesota. Free college for students whose families are making under 80K. So, very, very, very progressive in that element of a vision going forward. And I think it's just rare that you find someone with that type of background that has that sort of vision. So I feel like it's very unifying for the party.
Yeah, most definitely. I think that on this ticket, he is to the left of Kamala. Kamala was to the left of Biden on that 2020 ticket. And so when we think about VPs are usually supposed to be a balancer, right? Someone who's going to be agreeable, someone who's going to know how to do the waltz, no pun intended, with the POTUS. And so VPs have become pivotal, I think, since the Clinton administration. And here's why I'm saying this, because Clinton had, Clinton was considered to be a moderate, right? When the administration came in, they wanted to come in and one up the Republicans from the 80s, because you had Reagan for 2 terms, then you had Bush Sr. for 1 term, and then the Clinton administration, Democrats wanted to one up what Republicans and conservatives were doing at the time. And I think that Bill Clinton came in and they had a lot of reforms to come play in, to try to play with, and one of them was the 94 crime bill, and that happened to be what Democrats had held their hat on, as being tough on crime. And that's where Bill Clinton really got his shine, and that's where Democrats really hit back and really hit hard on. But when I'm saying when it comes to VP, Clinton's VP, why is his name slipping my mind right now? Al Gore. Al Gore was to the left of Clinton, if I remember correctly. And then you take into consideration in 2008, Joe Biden being the VP, I think that Biden had some policies like VAWA, and a couple other policies that made him seem like he was either in lockstep or moving towards the left. But Obama was to the left of Biden. Biden was the moderate that he needed to hit those key flyover states and some of those key battleground states. And so I think VPs become a very instrumental asset to your campaign now. And so I don't think that Biden would have won without Kamala, and I don't think that Kamala would be able to move forward without a Tim Walz. I think that Tim Walz was what they were looking for the whole entire time. Maybe not in the white package that they're looking for, but I definitely think that Tim Walz is the on paper, that's exactly how they were looking to play it out. That we needed somebody who was progressive, even more progressive than the POTUS on the ticket, or than Kamala was on the ticket. And so I think when you look at what Tim Walz brings to the table, he served in the military. He also speaks Mandarin. This is going to be key, because when you start talking about China from a foreign policy perspective, Tim Walz fits that to a T. Easy for them to walk in, easy for them to actually engage the Communist Party in China, and easy for them to actually have a deeper conversation about, AUKUS as well as the Quad, because that's America's security strategy in Southeast Asia. And so Tim Walz fits this perfectly. He comes in at the perfect time with the perfect resume.
Yeah, he's the best description. He's kind of a Swiss Army knife. You have some candidates, hey, they're really good speakers, but they don't know much about policy. You have some candidates who are, policy wonks, but they're not that charismatic. You have some candidates who, they may know policy, but they're not a good campaigner. They may be decent on the stump, but they don't connect to people, like when you have to go and shake hands. He checks all those boxes. He's been a governor, so he knows how to govern on a large scale. And along those lines too, he's actually the head of the Democratic Governors Association. So he's gonna have a lot of those relationships that you can lean on when you're talking about policies and building out policies flowing down to the states. You have a lot of connections there. I know when he was in the House, a lot of people liked working with him as well there. So I think he may not necessarily blow every area out of the water, and he does have, obviously he appears older than he really is. Him and Kamala are about the same age, but I just think from an actual getting stuff done and governing, and then being able to connect to people, I think he does all those really well. And we listened to his speech today in Philadelphia. He's actually pretty good on the stump as well. So that's where I think he has a lot to bring, and there's very little downside. Obviously, they've done the vetting, so personal life, all those things. There will be a few things that I'm sure, like, people will try to go back to the George Floyd after and how that was handled with the protests afterwards. But with that, I've heard people on the right say, hey, he didn't call in the National Guard fast enough, and then I've heard people on the left say, oh, he called it in too quickly. So that issue, I figured no one's really going to be able to, any governor you throw in that situation, I feel like people are never going to be satisfied with the answers. So, I kind of feel like that's going to be like the biggest controversy they're kind of going to throw at him. But he can point through, hey, I gave the case to Keith Ellison, and we got a conviction. So.
Yeah, the other piece here is that, he pushed for marijuana legalization, got it. When you think about climate change and climate impact, he's right there. Like you said earlier, free public college, that's always a home run, for lower income people. So he hits in those key areas. Also, gun control, gun safety, right? And so gun control legislation, he's on board with that. That's where he and Kamala are in lockstep with each other, really, really strong, right? And so he's a gun owner himself, so is Kamala, but they're both looking at gun control or gun control legislation in a way that is fundamental to their campaign and their in their new administration as well. Women's reproductive rights, he's right there in lockstep with it. And then you take into consideration, in terms of like electric vehicles and e-bike funding, he's all the way there with it. He's, like you said, he's a Swiss Army knife, but it's hard if you're a Republican, if you're Trump and Vance, it's hard to attack this guy, and it's hard to attack Kamala because the track records are so well pronounced and so enhanced. It's better than anything that these guys are coming with, both combined. Trump was president for 4 years, never served in office before that. JD Vance only served 2 years in the Senate. He really doesn't have that great of a track record. In fact, Kamala has a better track record than both of them combined. And if you combine Tim Walz and Kamala, their experience together makes them way more credible on paper and in action, because they've already exercised a lot of their ideas anyways, right? So Tim Walz has already gotten a lot of things done in Congress and in the governor's mansion, whereas Kamala, she's done a lot in the Senate, and she's doing it now as VP. And so the experience in both areas, whereas Kamala was in Senate for roughly 4 years, and then you taken, VP for 4 years. She's already had that Washington experience, whereas Tim Walz has 10 years experience as a member of Congress, and then you take in his 4.5 years now as governor, and he has a female lieutenant governor who's a Native American, first Native American to be a lieutenant governor. And so when we look at the resume and you look at all of the policy initiatives, I don't understand and don't know how any Republican can go up against this right now on the ticket. I don't see how they're going to be able to do it.
Yeah, he's actually a hunter as well too. So I was talking to Paradoxo on the Code Breakers, talking about his background. He was just highlighting, he's like, it's almost not fair when you think about it to have a Democrat with this sort of background that's a progressive as well too. That, normally when you think football coach, veteran, hunter, someone who is a governor of a Midwestern state, you normally think of someone who at the very least is a moderate Republican, if not a conservative. So the fact you have someone like that, and then they have a track record of liberal policies, coupled with, like I said, the background growing up in a small town, it's just it's pretty rare to see these people as Democrats. And maybe that's also kind of speaking to how Dems have sort of lost some of those voters over time that he can maybe bring back into the fold.
He's very close to that of what Bernie Sanders is to Vermont. He has all of the phenotypical as well as fortitude of a Bernie Sanders. I think he is right now where Bernie Sanders wanted to be in 2016. And so they call him a socialist. Remember, Biden on the ticket said in 2020, I defeated the socialists. Not really, Biden. Actually, you got a socialist now on a ticket. And so this is the person that they've been looking for. This, and Kamala, maybe this is probably what she's been waiting for the whole entire time. Someone who can really carry that agenda. Outside of that, he banned chokeholds from law enforcement, forced more body cams on officers in Minnesota. And so he's done a lot of the work that the Progressive Caucus in Washington has largely been trying to push for. Congressional Black Caucus has largely been trying to push for. I don't see how they can actually argue against this. Let's take a look at his track record as governor. This is from the Minnesota governor's website. When we could look at some of the executive orders that have been passed, this is just in a recent last week or so. Authorizing financial assistance to veterans. Hey, who stands up for veterans? Is it Tim Walz or is it really JD Vance? Let's see. Continuing the governor's committee on the safety, health, and well-being of agriculture and food processing workers. So he stands with labor. Outlining responsibilities of new state agencies, providing National Guard assistance to the state of Wisconsin. That works out well. When you have to campaign in Wisconsin, there's where you hang your hat at. Okay. Declaring a peacetime emergency and providing National Guard assistance to local emergency flood operations in Minnesota. Authorizing the Minnesota National Guard to transport equipment that will support search and rescue operations. Providing regulatory relief for septic system service companies. continuing the Governor's Council on Freight Rail, directing continued development and maintenance of the Minnesota Continuity of Government Plan and Agency Continuity of Operations Plans, and improving access to state employment. I mean, I'm just reading this over. I'm not going into any details, but I'm just reading over the fact that these are executive orders coming from the governor's mansion, meaning that he's taking action where he sees fit. Okay. Renaissance, you have any
Yeah, I'm looking at the one providing equitable, inclusive, and effective government for all, rescinding Executive Order 1901 and Executive Order 2113.
We can click on that. Equity and inclusion are top priorities for our administration. In recent years, Minnesota faced numerous challenges that revealed and exacerbated inequities in our state. While we have made significant strides toward a more equitable and inclusive Minnesota, our work is not finished. We remain committed to creating a Minnesota where every individual can thrive, no matter their background or identities. In my first Executive Order 19-01, I established the One Minnesota Council on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. One Minnesota Council. The One Minnesota Council is focused on ensuring that those who are most affected by state government decisions are involved and centered in the decision-making process. To build on the work of the One Minnesota Council, I issued Executive Order 21-13, creating the Governor's Community Council on Inclusion and Equity. Under Executive Order 2113, the Chief Inclusion Officer led the Community Council, which consisted of community members impacted by systemic inequities. It collaborated with the One Minnesota Council and state agency equity practitioners to develop a long-range plan with recommendations for a more equitable, inclusive, and effective state government. I mean, how do you argue against that?
Yeah, he appointed it says further down, he appointed the state's first chief equity officer. So that's something. Hey, you say the word DEI in some of these states, and they're like, they're ready to censor you. Might even try to fine you or something like that. Alabama, Florida, they're shutting down DEI offices on state campuses, on institutions. So I'm sure you would never see in these deep red states, even some of these swing states, an actual DEI like chief equity officer, like an actual executive for the state. So that's huge.
Well, yeah, because most of your college campuses, they're dismantling their DEI programs, whereas in Minnesota they're upholding a lot of this. They're doubling down. That makes sense because they called Kamala a DEI hire, and before they were calling Kamala Harris a DEI hire, they were calling Mayor Brandon Scott and Governor Wes Moore DEI hires. And so you see this concerted attack on not just Kamala Harris as the VP, but on Black elected officials as being DEI hires by the very campaign that needs to win in these key battleground states. It doesn't fly over very well. And so I'm saying all that to say that when you really look at the ticket, it's kind of hard to argue whether or not Tim Walz is a viable candidate. I think his track record speaks for itself. I think these executive orders tell you exactly what he's thinking. And I think that when you take into consideration a JD Vance, I don't think JD Vance can even hold a candle to this guy right now.
Yeah, the other thing I think is interesting too is Roland Martin tweeted on X earlier today. He was saying, hey, when Kamala Harris was picked by Joe Biden, everybody said it was a DEI hire, but Kamala Harris, basically said, hey, she was going to pick a moderate, for all intents and terms, a moderate white sort of governor from a state. And, you didn't hear people coming out and saying, oh, with the short list of candidates that any of them were, DEI hires. So you didn't even hear Republicans complaining about, oh, you all put, all white men as the only people who were essentially in the running. You didn't hear someone like Wes Moore chime in and be like, oh, well, you have all white men as a short list, so this DEI. So it just goes to show it doesn't work both ways.
Yeah, because it's always expected that the white guy is qualified for the job, regardless if he's qualified or not, right? And so, it shows the double standard that we have in politics, that black candidates are not qualified and only white men are qualified, white and male. So let's look at JD Vance's track record here really quickly. Let me zoom in on this. His office started in January 2023. Senate Bill 12, bill to prohibit the government of the District of Columbia from using federal funds to allow individuals who are not citizens of the United States to vote in any election and for other purposes. Protect funding for Women's Health Care Act, a bill to prohibit federal funding of Planned Parenthood Federation of America. Okay. Ensuring Accurate and Complete Abortion Data Reporting Act of 2023, a bill to amend Title, let me see, that's Title 9? No, that can't be Title 9.
No, that's 19.
Yeah, it's 19, yeah. Of the Social Security Act and Public Health Service Act, to improve the reporting of abortion data to Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and for other purposes. Protecting funding for Women's Health, Women's Health Care Act, ensuring Accurate and Complete Abortion Data Reporting Act of 2023. Protecting Individuals with Down Syndrome Act. All right. Snoop Act of 2023. Stop the Nosy Obsession with Online Payments Act of 2023. No taxpayer funding for abortion and abortion insurance Full Disclosure Act of 2023. Standing with Moms Act, a bill to require Secretary of Health and Human Services to furnish tailored information to expectant mothers and for other purposes. No Budget, No Pay Act, a bill to provide that members of Congress may not receive pay after October 1st of any fiscal year in which Congress has not approved a concurrent resolution on the budget and passed the regular appropriations bills. Forgotten Heroes of the Holocaust Congressional Gold Medal Act, a bill to award a congressional gold medal to 60 diplomats in recognition of their bravery and heroism during the Holocaust. I wonder who that goes to. Educational Choice for Children Act, a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to allow credit against tax for charitable donations to nonprofit organizations providing education scholarships to qualified elementary and secondary students. China Trade Relations Act of 2023, a bill to withdraw normal trade relations treatment from and apply certain provisions of the Title IX of the Trade Act of 1974 to products of the People's Republic of China, and to expand the eligibility requirements for products of the People's Republic of China to receive normal trade relations treatment in the future. NAPA Reauthorization Act, an act to extend the National Alzheimer's Project. I don't want to read too much in this, man. Here's the deal. Anybody who thinks that JD Vance is a better candidate than Kamala Harris on the ticket needs to leave a comment in the comment section under the video proving that. Okay. Anybody who thinks that JD Vance is a better qualified VP than Tim Walz needs to leave that comment under the video after it's posted, because based on what we're reading right now, I don't think that this guy is qualified to be a VP at all. Renaissance, what do you think?
Yeah, Vance is looking like the rule of vice presidential picks is don't do any harm. He's definitely done some harm. He's definitely got some things, some tropes that have sort of stuck to him. Even if the whole couch thing, it turned out to actually not be true. It was just someone kind of made it up on the internet, but it's stuck, and he really can't make it unstick. Coupled with just it's clear they didn't vet him that well. I think he was kind of rushed in the last minute by Peter Thiel as well as Don Jr. and pushed for. So he's definitely not been a good pick. He's only been a senator for 2 years, so he really hasn't even been in government. And I think the lack of vetting coupled with the lack of experience is just showing. You contrast to someone who's been not only in the House representatives for about a decade, but also has been a governor for 6 years. It's not going to look like it's going to really hold up. If anything, the Trump ticket looks like it's very unqualified, and really you kind of start scratching your head like how did these people end up at the top of the ticket or in the positions that they're in, just when you compare them to both parties.
Let me read these last 5 ones here. Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection, a bill to amend Title 18 United States Code to prohibit a healthcare practitioner from failing to exercise proper degree of care in the case of a child who survives an abortion or attempted abortion. Constitutional Carry Reciprocity Act of 2023, a bill to allow reciprocity for the carrying of certain concealed firearms. Stove Act, Stop Trying to Obsessively Vilify Energy Act, a bill to prohibit any rule or guidance that bans gas stoves in the United States. Promoting Access to Diabetic Shoes Act, a bill to amend of the Social Security Act to permit nurse practitioners and physician assistants to satisfy the documentation required under the Medicare program for coverage of certain shoes for individuals with diabetes. Fair Access to Banking Act, a bill to amend the Federal Reserve Act to prohibit certain financial service providers who deny fair access to financial services from using taxpayer-funded discount window lending programs and other purposes. I'll be honest. I don't know what the Black Manosphere sees in a candidate like JD Vance, but based on what we're reading right here, this isn't going to cut the mustard against a Tim Walz. Border Safety and Security Act of 2023, a bill to authorize the safety of Homeland Security to suspend the entry of aliens in order to achieve operational control of the border and for other purposes. Who's really benefiting from this right now? None of what he's proposing or none of what he's talking about benefits black men at all. When you really think about it, none of it even says black on it. But what's interesting, Renaissance, is when they talk about Democrats, and specifically Kamala Harris and now Tim Walz, they're going to say, oh, I don't think, are they talking about reparations? Are they talking about, cutting the check? Well, based on JD Vance's position, I don't think he wants any government involvement with reparations at the federal level, and he definitely does not want it at the state level in Ohio. I don't know. I don't know what people see in this guy. They say he speaks so well. I don't get it. I don't see what the incitement is right here. Any last thoughts on this, Renaissance?
Yeah, no, he's been a dud. He's caused harm to the ticket. He's broke the golden rule, and I don't even see how he's the heir to MAGA because he doesn't. I think Don Jr. is more charismatic than JD Vance, so I really don't get this pick other than hey, they want access to Silicon Valley money.
Yeah, big facts. I agree with that as well. As I said earlier, if you think that JD Vance is a better candidate for VP than Kamala Harris was to Biden, please leave your comments in the comment section. I would love to see how anybody can spin this now. And if you think he's a better candidate than Tim Walz, let me know so I can fire up a stream and we can actually have that conversation, because I'm not seeing it. As it stands right now, the Black Manosphere has been running behind JD Vance the last 2, 3, or 4 weeks. I'm not seeing any evidence of him being this great candidate. I'm not seeing any evidence of, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz as of right now needing to worry about a debate in September. Trump, I don't think he's ready for a debate in September. He can't even agree to where he wants to debate. And two, JD Vance going up a Tim Walz, I don't see that's going to work, especially with the fact checkers in place. Depending on where it is, I don't even know where they're going to hold it in October. But if I'm a Democrat on a ticket right now, or if I'm a Democrat elected in office, I don't have really much to worry about if this is the best that the Republicans have to throw at the Democrats at this point. Anyways, like, share, and subscribe. Please hit the like button on the way out, share the video if possible, and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust.